Alexander the Great, a name synonymous with conquest, ambition, and perhaps a touch of divine destiny, narrated with philosophical wisdom. Born in Pella, Macedonia, in 356 BC, his life was a whirlwind of military genius and unrelenting expansion. But what drove this insatiable hunger for power? And where does his story intersect with the threads of biblical history? Alexander's father, Philip II, was a king who transformed Macedonia into a military powerhouse. He instilled in Alexander a love for strategy and combat, preparing him for a life of leadership. Philip's assassination in 336 BC thrust a young Alexander onto the throne, inheriting not just a kingdom, but a war. Alexander swiftly consolidated his power, crushing rebellions in Thebes and securing his control over Greece. His ambitions, however, stretched far beyond. He set his sights on the vast Persian Empire, a power that had threatened Greece for centuries. Remember, the prophet Daniel, in Daniel 8, saw a ram with two horns representing the Medo-Persian Empire, being defeated by a goat with a prominent horn, a prophecy many believe points to Alexander's swift destruction of Persia. The Battle of Granicus River in 334 BC marked the beginning of Alexander's Persian campaign. A daring frontal assault across the river routed the Persian army, showcasing Alexander's tactical brilliance and personal courage. This victory opened the doors to Asia Minor. The Battle of Issus, 2 years later, was a decisive victory. Alexander faced Darius III, the Persian king himself. The Macedonian phalanx proved unstoppable, and Darius fled the field, leaving his family and his empire vulnerable. After the battle, Alexander captured Darius's family, treating them with respect, an act of both strategy and perhaps genuine compassion. The siege of Tyre was a brutal and protracted affair. The island city held out for 7 months, forcing Alexander to build a causeway to reach its walls. The siege demonstrated Alexander's unwavering determination and his willingness to employ innovative tactics. He would show no mercy, as Tyre was a strategically important port, and Alexander was determined to take it. Egypt welcomed Alexander as a liberator from Persian rule. He was crowned pharaoh and founded the city of Alexandria, which would become a center of learning and culture for centuries. Some historians believe Alexander saw himself as a god, embracing the Egyptian traditions of divine kingship. It's a point where ambition arguably turned into hubris. The Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC was the final showdown with Darius. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander's tactical genius prevailed. The Persian army was crushed, and Darius fled once more, later to be assassinated by his own men. This victory effectively ended the Achaemenid Persian Empire, placing Alexander as the king of Asia. Alexander continued his eastward expansion, venturing into Central Asia. His campaigns against the Scythians and other nomadic tribes were arduous and brutal. He established new cities, spreading Hellenistic culture throughout the region, but also facing growing resistance from his own troops, weary of endless war. As Alexander's power grew, so did his arrogance and paranoia. The death of Clytus the Black, a loyal friend and commander in a drunken rage, reveals a darker side to Alexander's character. It was a sign of increasing instability and a growing disconnect from his Macedonian roots. In 326 BC, Alexander invaded India. The Battle of the Hydaspes River against King Porus was a hard-fought victory, but the Macedonian army was exhausted and demoralized. They refused to go further, forcing Alexander to turn back. It was a turning point, marking the limit of his conquests. The return journey through the Gedrosian desert was a disaster. Thousands of soldiers perished from thirst, starvation, and disease. It was a testament to the folly of overextension and the limits of even the greatest military machine. In Proverbs 16:18, it says, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." This verse seems to encapsulate Alexander's fate. Alexander returned to Babylon, where he fell ill and died in 323 BC, at the age of 32. The cause of his death remains a mystery. Fever, poisoning, exhaustion, or perhaps a combination of all three. With no clear heir, his vast empire quickly fragmented, plunging the region into decades of war and chaos. Alexander's empire, built on conquest and maintained by force, proved unsustainable. His generals, known as the Diadochi, carved out their own kingdoms, ushering in the Hellenistic Age, a period of cultural exchange and political fragmentation. Though his empire didn't last, his influence on language, culture, and trade was immense. Ultimately, the Hellenistic kingdoms were eclipsed by new powers. Rome rose in the west, while the Parthians and other empires challenged the Seleucids in the east. Alexander's dream of a unified world under Hellenistic rule ultimately failed, replaced by new empires and new conflicts. What lessons can we learn from the rise and fall of Alexander the Great? The narrator asked, with a philosophical and cautionary tone. Perhaps it is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the corrupting influence of power, and the ephemeral nature of empires. In Ecclesiastes 2:11, the writer says, "Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun." The narrator explained, continuing thoughtfully, "While Alexander achieved unparalleled military success, his legacy is also marked by violence, instability, and the ultimate disintegration of his empire." Alexander's life, a whirlwind of conquest, reminds us that true and lasting legacy extends beyond mere earthly dominion. While his military genius is undeniable, the biblical perspective cautions against placing ultimate value on worldly achievements. The scriptures emphasize humility, justice, and love as the foundations of a truly meaningful life, qualities often overshadowed by Alexander's relentless pursuit of power. This is Hidden Histories. Like, share, and subscribe for more biblical mysteries, ancient truths, and forbidden knowledge, revealed daily.